Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Robin's Nest. Before we get started today, I wanted to give a wink and a nod and some recognition to Kenneth McDuffie, a friend of. He's the father of a friend of my wife's, and Melanie. And he passed away a few days ago. Is what I'm trying to say. And he was kind of a big deal in Mobile back in the day. From everything I've understood about him, he raced and he turned wrenches. And I'm gonna show you some photos. It's pretty cool. You can see one of these pictures that he has a Chevelle, and it's never good, for. Let me say this. I'm trying to put this the right way, and it's not fun losing a parent. It's not fun losing anybody. Been there, done that. So, just wanted to let them know that I'm praying for him. I'm thinking about him, and hopefully, things get better. I don't really know what else to say outside of that. Just it's really cool that he has a history in racing. I think he raced at Mobile here in Alabama, Mobile Speedway, which, by the way, if you've never been, I highly recommend jumping in your car, driving down here, checking it out. We went a few weeks ago, and it's one of the coolest tracks on the planet. And it's really cool now knowing some of the history of some people who competed back in the day before I was even thought about being born. And I grew up too. I grew up in Birmingham, and so Mobile Speedway was not on my radar at all. We had Birmingham International Raceway on the west end of Birmingham, and it eventually was bulldozed to make way for a sports complex. And the west side of Birmingham is pretty dangerous. I heard stories that the last couple of years that there were, you had to dodge bullets essentially to get to the racetrack. That's I'm paraphrasing and maybe a bit of an exaggeration, but it's pretty rough out there. So the tracks are gone, but that was when I was growing up. Is BIR, and it was Sayre, and now Sayre is still there. And Sayre is it's a great track if you're unfamiliar with it. Hut Strickland, who raced in NASCAR, he's in the Hall of Fame there. He cut his teeth back in the day. I have a friend, Chad Bearden, who races there now. I haven't been able to go up there and watch him race yet, but follow him on social media, and he's doing a great job. So I just want to give a nod to him. But basically, Mobile is one of the biggest tracks and the biggest short tracks in the southeast. So, and it's not far from Five Flags, and we know Five Flags is, in this area is definitely the place to go as far as big time auto racing on the short track circuit. They have the Snowball Derby and what have you, but Mobile's is a good one. And so, anyways, what I want to say is, to his family and everything, we're thinking about you and we're praying for you. And outside of that, if you find my rambling about motorsports, cars, anything like that interesting, make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, turn on notifications, the works. If you're interested in diecast cars, t-shirts, hats, or anything like that, auto parts, make sure to check out our eBay. The link is in the description. Also, make sure to follow us on Facebook and X for more motorsports content. Those links will also be in the description. So without further ado, let's get into it. So it came to my attention that quite a few folks got their feelings hurt by what I said yesterday about Franco Colapinto in Formula One. Drives for Alpine, if you didn't watch the video. I was essentially saying that, I don't know if he needs to be replaced at Alpine. Alpine, yes, it's not the greatest team in Formula One, obviously. Now, they have shown that they do have speed here and there, but overall, yeah, okay, it's not the greatest team in Formula One. I know that. But, for everyone who got their tummies, hurt for what I said, come on. I don't care who you are, where you're from. You're not above criticism just because you're from a certain country, okay? Or because you're a certain race or anything like that. I don't care who it is. I criticize white drivers as much as I criticize anybody else. It's not a race thing. I'm not racist. I pulled for Franco last year when he had a stint with Williams. I was actually a fan. He lost some of his appeal, in my opinion, when the whole thing happened with Doohan to open up the season, when Jack was painted into a corner in a possible situation to where it's like, hey, you need to perform in 4 races as a rookie, otherwise we're going to cut you loose in favor of Franco. That was screwed up, and he was done dirty. There's just no way around that. Now, Franco didn't have any say-so in that matter, I wouldn't imagine. And as a race car driver, he took advantage of the situation, which is what you're supposed to do. But I just didn't care for the way that whole thing worked out. And you look at Franco's results in the interim since that's happened, like, what is the difference? The only thing that I can come up with is that Franco brings more money to the table than what Jack did. And maybe Flavio Briatore, however you say his name, the team boss for Alpine, maybe he thinks that Franco's ceiling is higher than what Jack says. I don't know. I'm just calling it from my perspective, what I see. Now, for anyone who got their feelings hurt because I made that suggestion, get over it. Okay, I'm not gonna back down and apologize and all this other kind of stuff because I gave an opinion of a race car driver. Sorry, not gonna happen. And like I said, it's not racism to criticize what a driver's doing on the racetrack. It's just for that to have been, and the reason I'm saying all this is because I received some messages yesterday, not on YouTube but on a different platform because I cross-posted the video, and accused me of being racist, and I was like, kind of nonsense. No, I'm not in the slightest. Just, the kid's not performing. That's just all there is to it. It's just all there is to it. And like I said, it's not a personal attack. I don't know anything. Like, I don't know the kid personally. I don't know anything about him outside of what he's done on the racetrack. That's all I really care about. Honestly, when it comes to motorsports, I don't care about your personal life or anything like that that's going on. All I care about is what you can do on the racetrack, which used to be kind of the mentality of everybody back in the day, but, everyone's gotten soft. But, it's whatever. Yeah, we should be able to cross this bridge together, hand in hand, singing Kumbaya. If you disagree, if you don't like what a driver's doing, you ought to be able to say it without the mob coming after you, is what I'm trying to say. So, anyway, Supercars is in Ipswich, Queensland. They did 2 practice sessions last night before I fell asleep. I've got a house full of kids, and so trying to stay up and watch Supercars when they run, they start at 11 o'clock at night. It's kind of difficult, but anyways, it's about what you would expect. The 888 cars were top 5. I think Will Brown was fastest in the second session, and Brock Feeney was fastest in the first. And it brought me back to something that I've discussed several times on this channel and on other platforms, is that Supercars needs a cost cap. Just straight off the top, before we even start focusing on anything else, I think a cost cap is desperately needed. The reason being is, outside of the Penske years and outside of the one-off for Erebus and Brody, Supercars has essentially been a 888 series. Like I said, other than here and there one-offs, over the years, it's essentially been a 888 series. And the reason being, it's because, if you can afford to spend more on the team, you're going to. I know the drivers are good. I have no question that they're good. But when you go from one driver to the next and you don't miss a beat, if you get rid of one driver, you bring another one in, and you're just as good. Nothing changes. It's got to do with money. It just has to. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, if you've got the money to spend on the team and you can outspend everybody else, why wouldn't you do that? Obviously, you would. I just think it's out of control at this point. It has been. When Penske was there, it was a similar thing. The reason that Penske's team and Dick Johnson's team, they were together. The reason that they ran so well is because they were able to outspend everybody. And you look, as soon as Penske left the sport, DJR went back to being kind of middle of the road, and they haven't fully recovered. They haven't gotten back to the point where they were when Penske was involved. Like I said, Penske brought in more money, and more money will get you better resources. And that's just a fact. It's a fact that that's part of the game. And I'm not saying that as to take a shot at anybody. It's just, it is what it is. And if you've got the ability to do that, why wouldn't you do that? Obviously you would. But I just think to get some parity and to bring it back down, you need to bring it back down to a reasonable level, and not allow these guys to just spend whatever they want, in my personal opinion. Now, I could be wrong. A cost cap could not fix the problem at all. Maybe Triple Eight is just that good. They are good. But, from my perspective, I believe that they are able to outspend everybody, and by quite a substantial margin as well. Now, we'll see what happens next year when Toyota comes in, the kind of money that they put up, and see if the Walkinshaw cars or Brad Jones cars can compete. But I just don't see that Triple Eight switching over to Ford next year. I don't think they're going to miss a beat, honestly. I think they're going to be Ford's, they're essentially taking Walkinshaw's place at Ford, and I believe they're going to be the Ford team. They're going to get the most support and funding from that manufacturer. So it'd be interesting to see once we get to next year what happens. But I think a cost cap is sorely needed, and it's been needed for several years now. But we'll see what happens. My wife and I were talking about NASCAR this morning, and apparently Tony Bridinger, however you say her name, the girl that drives for Tricon in the Truck Series, evidently her street car was broken into, and someone stole her suitcase, and it had a whole bunch of stuff in it. She made a post about it this morning. And I just kind of tongue-in-cheek said, if you get a top 20 finish, then you can, and it was in all likelihood, if you get a top 20, they'll interview you on TV, and so you can bring it up there and get a bigger audience to help you find it. And I was joking, but I wasn't joking too at the same time. Like I said, it was kind of tongue-in-cheek, but this is another one of those situations where if you say something about it, then everyone gets their tummy hurt and they start getting pissed off and all that kind of stuff. Well, we just need to be honest about this, okay? Why is Tony Bridinger still with Tricon at this point? We know why. It dang sure ain't because of her results. It is because of what she brings monetarily to the table. She lands some of the biggest sponsors to be on that truck. Sunoco, Dave & Buster's, so on and so forth. But what has she done? Like, the fact that girl is even in that ride to start with is ridiculous in my opinion, because she did not do anything in ARCA that even remotely said that she was ready to move into the Truck Series. And now she's in the Truck Series with a team who her teammate is constantly competing for wins every weekend. The other trucks are running top 10 or thereabout every weekend. She struggles to finish in the top 25. Now, you watch these races and you hear Michael Waltrip constantly making excuses for her, talking about how good she's doing. She's running 20th. She's doing great. Well, she's in championship winning material, equipment, yet she can't run top 25 or top 20 even. And there's been no signs of improvement since the season started. It's been a disaster. And you can't talk about this. It's no different than the deal with Franco. Rather, in this case, it has nothing to do with race. It has to do with gender. You can't talk about Tony being awful without being branded as a sexist. Well, I got news for everyone. I'm not that either. Okay? I was, and still am, a massive Johanna Long fan. I thought she actually had the potential to be a champion in NASCAR. But whereas these other women that come along, they actually get support from NASCAR. NASCAR helps land them rides and so on and so forth. That didn't happen with Johanna. And so she disappeared. She washed out. And it's frustrating because you see these people like Tony. They come in, they've got a large social media following. They can land big time sponsors. And so they get plugged into these rides in these upper 3 series before they're ready. And then they're expected to get results basically straight out of the gate. How do you expect that to happen? Like, and I've talked about this before, but the fact that we're trying to force women and minorities into the series before they're ready, it's never going to work. You want someone else like Bubba Wallace in the Cup Series, it has to happen organically. Bubba, I'm not a fan, but Bubba busted his ass to get to where he's at. Yeah, to get to the Richard Petty team. Now, I'm not going to get into him leaving and going to 2311 and why that all happened. But prior to that, he busted his ass to stay in the sport. You know? And I just think you've got to let this stuff happen organically. LeVar Scott is another one. He, so far, has not been plugged into a ride with a big-time corporate sponsor in like a Junior Motorsports. Not saying that Junior Motorsports would do that, but just as an example. And then expected to go out and immediately get results. So far, that hasn't happened. I hope that doesn't happen. He's made a start or two. I think it may just be one, but with Alpha Prime in Xfinity, that's the route that it needs to go. Okay, he needs to get rides with the not top tier teams. No dig against them, but they're not a top tier team. And kind of cut his teeth and get acclimated with the equipment. But he also, LeVar, he hasn't won a race in ARCA yet. So you've got to give these guys and gals time to get acclimated with what they're doing and, be successful before you start trying to force them up into other series. Because like I said, it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked at all, period. The Bubba thing, like I said, that basically happened organically. When he came up from Kyle Busch's truck team and he went to drive for Roush, and then he went and took a couple rides with Richard Petty Motorsports, and then that ended up turning into a full-time deal. That's the way that it needs to go. And I'm tired of seeing these people just shoved into a seat because they bring sponsor dollars with them, or they've got a social media following. It's nonsense. It is. It's just nonsense. That's all there is to it. But speaking of women, I want to know this. I was thinking about this yesterday. Every major sport on this planet, basically, is segregated based on gender. Okay, so like soccer, for example, you have men's soccer, you have women's soccer. Basketball, you have the WNBA, you have the NBA, so on and so forth. Why is racing not the same way? Abby Eaton, I don't know if you're familiar with who she is, but she was the driver for the Grand Tour TV show with Jeremy Clarkson, Richard Hammond, and James May. When they left Top Gear and they made the Grand Tour, she was their driver. Not at first, Mike Skinner was. Then Mike had a falling out with the crew, and they replaced him with Abby Eaton. Okay, and she's a professional race car driver. Now, she did an interview not super long ago where she was talking about, or she was asked about, why it is that women haven't been successful overall, leaving drag racing out of it, because that's a whole different animal. But overall, why haven't women been successful against men in motorsports? Now, Abby Eaton, I could be wrong, and she's no conservative. She's, none of that kind of stuff. I certainly don't think that she falls on that side of the divide when it comes to social issues. Now, she said that it's because the inherent physical differences between men and women. Men are bigger, just on average, are bigger, they have better stamina, so on and so forth, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just how humans are. Women have these attributes, men have these attributes. They're not the same. They never will be. Okay. When you put them in a race car against one another for hours on end, who do you think is going to be successful in that scenario? You think a woman who on average is smaller has less stamina than a man who on average is bigger, has more muscle mass, more stamina, so on and so forth? The man is going to be successful 9 times out of 10. Now, you had one-off scenarios like in rally back in the day. You had the one championship, and then you had in drag racing, like I said, Brittany Force and stuff like that. But drag racing's, in my opinion, drag racing is a completely different animal. And then you had Danica, who won the one race in IndyCar. Outside of that, nothing's really happened. Haley won a couple of races in ARCA. Like I said, there's been here and there situations. Johanna won the Snowball Derby at Five Flags several years ago. She had to spin out Landing Castle to do it, but nevertheless, she won. And I'm not talking crap about her because, again, I'm a huge fan and always have been. But why do we not have a separate series for women? We have series for men, series for women. Why does that not exist? Formula One has a Formula One Academy, which is for women only. But once they graduate from the academy, they go straight into the series with the men. And thus far, no one's been successful doing so. I just, my personal opinion is we need to have separate categories in motorsports, like in every other professional sport. One for women, one for men. And they need to be on equal footing. Not a series over here like the W series that no one watched, no one cared about, and so it ended up going belly up. No, we need to have series that are equivalent to the male version. The same thing everybody's been clamoring for with WNBA and NBA, where the women need to be paid the same as the men, and however you feel about that, that's not really what I'm saying, but like the actual, just the series need to be the same, but just segregated with men on one side, women on the other. And then you could actually see women be successful in motorsport. And I get the whole argument that when women beat men, it's a feather in their cap and that kind of thing. I get that, but it's not happening though. So if it's not happening, why don't we do something to fix that problem? Because I want to see women in motorsports. I want to see women be successful in motorsports. Unless we have some fluke thing come along in the next few years, it's just I don't see it happening. I don't. When do you think we'll see a woman on the Formula One grid? It's not going to happen. If it does, it's not going to be anytime soon. Same thing with NASCAR, the Cup Series. Catherine Legge is not a good example to disprove my argument, but when are we going to see a woman in the Cup Series successful in the Cup Series? Like I said, I'm not saying anything bad about Catherine. She's driving for Live Fast Motorsports. It's not a top shelf team. It's one of the lower funded teams in the series. So that doesn't count in this argument. When she runs with a top team or something like that, then we can have that conversation. We can see where she stacks up. But as of right now, that's not happening because of who she drives for. And nothing against that team, by the way. BJ McLeod is a badass, so I have no problem with that. I don't know if Matt Tifft is still involved with that team or not, but Matt Tifft, also a badass. But I want to see a scenario where women can be successful in motorsports, and I feel like that's really the best avenue to take. Will that ever happen? I don't know. I don't know. In my opinion, it needs to sooner rather than later. But of course, that's gonna require people putting the money up to make it happen. And as of right now, I don't really see much of an effort outside of the F1 Academy. I don't see that happening. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But anyways, if you found my rambling interesting, you like listening to me ramble about cars, motorsports, anything like that, make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, turn on notifications. If you are interested in diecast cars, t-shirts, hats, auto parts, anything like that, make sure to like my eBay page, but visit my eBay page. Jeez. And anyways, we have a bunch of stuff on there. The link is in the description. If you find something that you're interested in, just shoot me an offer and we'll go from there. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and X. Those links are also in the description. We post a whole bunch of motorsports content on both of those. So thanks for watching. Until next time, God bless. Peace.